Yesterday I talked about the risk homeostasis theory and how one's perception of risk will determine behaviors, and related it to kind of playmaking or point guard play, decision making, penetration, things of this nature. One of the things that I didn't mention, and I think is probably the easiest example, is how teams behave based on the score of the game. So when the game is close and tight at the end of the game, teams will take a lot fewer risks. Whereas if you're playing, let's say in the second half, and a team's down, maybe 10 or 12 or 15 points, all of a sudden that team oftentimes will play better. They'll hit a couple threes in a row, they'll start pressing, they'll play a little bit faster, get some better shots. The team that's ahead, maybe they don't want to foul and give a three-point play, so they don't contest a layup quite as hard. Things like that happen. And so, oftentimes you'll hear, the TV guys or parents in the stands or something, if only they would play like that all the time. And so one of the things that happens is, their risky behavior increases. So when you're behind by 12, the reward becomes a lot greater for a risky play than the actual risk. Whereas if it's a close game, let's say, in the last minute, a risky play could have a big risk, because if, let's say, you go for a steal and you don't get it and you give up an open shot, that could be what ultimately decides the game. Whereas if you're down by 12 points and you go for a steal and you give up a shot, now you're down by 14. In reality, it's 12, 14 points is basically the same thing. But if you get that steal, now you're cutting into the lead. Maybe you set up your defense and you can get going again. And get yourself on track. So, I think the way that teams behave when they have leads and when they have, or when they're trailing, a lot of that behavior is due to risk perception and the risk reward kind of balance, cost analysis. And that's something that as coaches, we need to teach to players how to behave in those situations. How do you want to play when you have a lead? How do you want to play in a tight game at the end of the game? How do you want to play when you're down 12 points in the third quarter? These are situations that should be practiced and should be addressed, and not just waiting until the season to get in a situation to see how players will react to it, but instead trying to prepare for these situations so that players stay aggressive when they have a lead, as opposed to playing passive and giving the other team an opportunity. But actually doing what helped you to get the lead, just continuing to play the same way, as opposed to changing the way that you play just because you're up by 8 or 10 points or something like that. So again, these are situations that happen all the time during games, and behaviors change based on these situations, and teams and coaches and players should prepare for these different types of scenarios, and especially how they're going to evaluate that risk reward, cost benefit type analysis in games based on time and score, so that players and coaches are prepared for these situations as opposed to reacting to them when they get in game situations.